Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asuk b'divrei Torah. Varivna Adonai Eloheinu et divrei Toratcha b'finu v'yimcha beit Yisrael. V'niyeh anachnu v'tzeitzeinu v'tzeitzeimcha beit Yisrael kulanu yodei shemecha l'mdei Toratech l'shma. Baruch atah Adonai l'mei Torah l'mo Yisrael. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'chabanu mikol ha'amim v'natan lanu Torato. Baruch atah Adonai noten Torah.
Amen. Can we do today's one in dedication of my mother-in-law who's got corona?
Are you kidding me? Nadine's mother?
Yeah, Nadine's mom, yeah.
Yeah,
What's her
absolutely.
Hebrew name?
Her Hebrew name is Mira, but Hilka.
Okay. Mira but Hilka.
Hilka, yeah.
Okay, is that her mother's name?
Yeah.
All right, of course. I know 54.
Yeah.
It's been a sheer pleasure.
It's been a sheer pleasure. All right, Kevin, I'm sorry about this, but sorry. All right, let's start again.
No problem.
I'm going to edit this. 18.B3. We have already discussed that does Shoros resemble Keren Tam because it's half payment damages, stating that we pay also for the second leniency from the body of the damaging animal, or do we say that you pay full payment from choice property, like the standard case, because it's a torta of, sorry, the cat jumped. It's a torta of regal. It's a torta of regal. So we want to know that because it's a torta of regal, do we pay that half payment damages from choice property, or does it resemble Keren Tam from the payment of the animal? So that's already been discussed. We discussed a case of the dog and the biscuit moving from point A to B, and we say that here it's a bit of a different issue because Rava wants to know about normal Shoros. When the case of it's mixed with Keren Tam, then that is an exception because it happens to do Shoros through Keren Tam. So we mentioned in the full on the body of the dog, that's why it is. We still don't know in a normal case of Shoros. Now there's a second question that's asked, Gav, and that question is as follows. It's saying that if the animal does Shoros more than 3 times, does it become muad to full payment damages that resembles Keren Tam that becomes Keren muad? Okay, because it's half payment damages, or does it resemble regal in the fact that this is a special law from Moshe of Har Sinai and it remains at half payment damages no matter how many times the animal does Shoros? So what do each of you say regarding this?
It's unlimited.
Reason?
The reason is because it's a law from Hashem. It's a law from Har Sinai, and you have to stick to that law, and that law had no limitation. It said it's half payment for Taurus. That's it.
Okay, and what does Kevin and Arthur say?
You first, Kev.
I didn't get the question. Sorry, I'm distracted to have a million things. So what's the question again?
The question is, because Shoros is half payment damages, and so is Keren Tam, do we say that after 3 offenses of Keren Tam, it becomes muad to full payment damages because it's like Keren Tam in that it's half payment damages? Or do we say it has nothing to do with Keren Tam because it's a law from Moshe of Har Sinai, the special Shoros law that you pay half damages? And why should it become muad after 3 times? So what do you say?
Is this specific to a chicken or to any animal?
That's a good question, Arthur. We're learning 3 cases. The first case, we're going to learn 3. We discussed the chicken, and then we discussed a big animal with dung last time.
Okay.
And we're going to discuss a 3rd case. So they're using different examples.
So, Damon, it never becomes muad even after 3 times.
Okay, so that's what we're going to determine. But what is your thought? And why would you think
it can't become muad?
Okay.
Because it's always unintentional. And it can't be warned for that action. I think
It makes sense. What does Arthur say?
Well, what about, I mean, what is to do with an animal that's aggressive more than anything else?
Okay.
And a chicken hopping in something, or I mean, doing something that's not from aggression, it's just out of what they're doing. You know, it's not a situation where they're doing it deliberately. It's just that's how, like, you know, it's not like they're goring you in any way like a bull can. It might peck you to death, but that's about it. You know.
Absolutely. So I see where the three of you are coming from, and I actually agree with you logically. Just give me 1 sec, guys. 1 sec. So based on what you're saying to me makes more logical sense. We're going to see how this concludes.
Okay.
But my principle is exactly like you all three, is that the fact of it is, it doesn't matter if it's half payment damages. It doesn't resemble Keren Tam in any logical way. Just like you've got full payment damages for Shane and Regal, and even a Keren Muad, or fire, or pit, or man. Just because you pay from choice property and full payment doesn't mean that any of those damages resemble each other. So how can you say here that for a tame animal, for Keren Tam, where you pay half payment damages, just because Soros is half payment damages, that you necessarily, these are the two questions, pay from the body of the animal, damaging animal, which is the first leniency. And then the second stringency is that with Keren Tam, after being forewarned 3 times, it becomes muad to full payment damages. Because as Arthur said, the word there, and Kevin and Gavin addressed, is actually forewarned. So the Gemara has a loose term for muad, because it uses the term for sumchus, as in meaning full payment damages, but the literal word muad means warned. So I would agree with the three of you that however this comes out, the logic would tell us that the leniency paying in terms of the body doesn't make sense, because why? The pasuk says an ox for an ox. Okay? Here the pasuk doesn't say anything like that for tzoros. So how can you necessarily say it's from the body of the animal as the first leniency? The second leniency. The first leniency, Kevin, is half payment damages. The second leniency is you pay for the damages to the weight and the extent of the damaging animal. Also, don't laugh. What are you laughing
2
at?
kilogram chicken. Oh, okay. Oh, yeah, here's my chicken. Have a nice day. I mean, bye.
No, listen, I get it. Arthur, the lethal chihuahua is going to bankrupt you. I get it. I get the ridiculousness.
I'm talking about the
and
chicken.
And the chicken is also, you're going to have to, the same thing.
Take it from the body of the animal. I'll see you in Shabbos.
Because he's imagining this very lightweight animal causing damage, and you might have to pay 30 rand for a chicken for 6 grand Ming Vase. So maybe so the leniency of the animal is paying by the animal's body is one, and the second one is, does the animal ever become muad after 3 times, on the 4th time? So we can see here that the first issue was addressed. We don't know. We only know in the case of Keren Tam mixed with Soros. In that case, it's half payment damages, because it's Keren Tam that happens to be done through an animal's force of carrying it from point A to B. But Rava's question wasn't answered. It remains unresolved, because we just want to know a case of normal Soros, not mixed with Keren Tam. And with normal Soros, does the animal, there's 2 questions with regards to muad. So the first question is, if the animal becomes muad on Keren Tam mixed with Soros, like the case of the dog and the biscuit, for example, does it ever become, when it's Keren muad, that it's full payment because it's Soros mixed with Keren Tam, which becomes Keren muad? Or do we say that it ever becomes in a case of standard Soros where the animal becomes full, responsible for full damage? So we've all logically said in the case of normal Soros, there's no reason to assume that the animal becomes obligated to full payment damages. Why was there leniency in Keren Tam that we learned? We learned that the leniency, remember we learned if a Keren Tam, it was determined, is it a mammon, is it compensation, or is it a knas, is it a penalty? And according to how you learn that, that would kind of be the answer to a certain extent. Because if you learn it according to a penalty, then you've learned that you shouldn't really pay anything for Keren Tam. We're only paying to give the owner a warning that he's got to look after his animal. And by that stringency, what does that have to do with normal tzoros? So all of you three guys are right in logic that doesn't resemble normal tzoros, where the animal would become liable for full damages after multiple incidents, right? So that I want you to keep clear. So again, we've got Keren Tam mixed with tzoros, Keren Tam not mixed with tzoros. Keren Tam mixed with tzoros, you pay from the body of the animal because it's the Keren Tam. For normal tzoros, Rava's case hasn't been answered. Are you with me? In the case of paying with regards to half payment damages or full payment, with Keren Tam mixed with tzoros, we're going to see now. In terms of normal tzoros, does it ever become after 3 times where you're paying from choice property that it becomes muad? We're going to see now. So the first case that we had was the chicken hopping. Okay, that was yesterday. And it says, come learn a proof from the following brisa cited earlier. Hopping is not considered muad for a chicken. Some say, however, that it is considered muad. The Gemara analyzes this brisa. Can you think that the brisa refers to a simple case of hopping? Certainly almost agree that it's normal for a chicken to hop. And since it would be normal for a chicken to hop, that would be standard regal. So we're saying rather the brisa must mean that the chicken was hopping and it sent pebbles flying into a utensil, breaking it. So then it's obviously a case goes with tzoros, no question. So it says, is it not speaking in the case where the chicken did this 3 times, and the Tanaim in the brisa are arguing about the following point? One master, some say, holds that there's muad for tzoros, whereas the other master, the Tana Kamma, holds that there's no muad for tzoros. So what we're saying is here, this is not a case of abnormal tzoros, of Keren Tam mixed with tzoros. This is a normal case of tzoros because it's kicking pebbles. So do we say that the brisa is talking about a case where the chicken did this 3 times, that one master said it's gone from half payment damages to full payment? It's gone from not muad to muad? Or are we saying after 3 times for normal tzoros, it still remains not muad? Meaning, it means that it doesn't ever become muad. It's a rule from Moshe of Har Sinai. So the answer to this brisa is that the Gemara rejects this proof. No, the Tanaim may be speaking about ordinary tzoros of one time, and they're arguing the point of dispute between Sumchus and the rabbis. So what it's saying from this brisa is as follows. There's no ways that one can say that this is speaking about where the chicken did it 3 times. That is an assumption. It nowhere mentions 3 times in the brisa. So you can't interpret something that's not there. The only thing you can interpret is the facts of the brisa that says, some say it's muad for the chicken, some say it's not. So because it hasn't assigned reason, it has not assigned a reason, we say that, listen, it could be only 2 opinions. Sumchus, who hold there's full payment for tzoros, ordinary tzoros, those that say it's muad would agree with Sumchus that it's full payment damages. Okay. And Kevin, those that agree with the Tana Kamma and the rabbis turn around and say there is no muad for tzoros. Does that make sense? This is in the case of ordinary tzoros. Guys, I feel like you're kind of falling a little bit asleep.
Not at all.
No, I'm awake. I'm laying in my
Kevin,
kitchen.
you're exhausted.
Oh, Kevin's been working all day.
Okay, that's all right. So, Kevin, what I'm saying is as follows. You can't read in words and says that the brisa says 3 times anything. Brisa said nothing like that. So the Gemara rejects the proof and says, look, the only thing we can establish is the facts. And the facts is that some say it's muad for tzoros, some say it's not. So then those that say it's muad, it's either the author of the Bryce is sumchus, or the rabbis that agree with sumchus, that it's full payment for tzoros, ordinary tzoros, or we say according to the rabbis, the general opinion of the rabbis, that there's half payment for tzoros. That's the only thing that you can derive. Then yesterday we learned another brisa, which I'm not going through the whole thing. And that other brisa was talking about come learn a proof from an Amorite dispute. Now this isn't a Tanite dispute. If an animal dropped dung into a dough, ruining it, Rav Yehuda said that the animal's owner pays full damages, but Rav Elazar said he only pays half the damage. Is it not speaking in a case where the animal did this 3 times, and Rav Yehuda and Rav Elazar argue about the following point? So one master, Rav Yehuda, holds that there's muad for tzoros, whereas the other master holds there's no muad for tzoros. So what we're saying here is maybe Rav Yehuda is holding that if the animal did tzoros more than 3 times, that it becomes liable to full damages, and Rav Elazar holds that there's no muad for ordinary tzoros, that if the animal damages more than 3 times, it's still half payment damages. And the Gemara rejects this proof as well. Why does it reject this proof about an animal that dropped dung onto a dough? It says no, because the Amoraim are speaking about a case of tzoros of 1 time, and they're arguing the point of a dispute between Sumchus and the rabbis. So remember, these are Amoraim. They cannot argue with a Tana of an earlier generation, and they can't add words. So all that they can come to do is bring a previous argument of the case of Sumchus, and the rabbis, and Sumchus says, listen, full payment damages even for the first offense of tzoros, because he doesn't hold from the law of Moshe of Har Sinai, and the rabbis that do say it doesn't matter how many times the chicken did damage, or the ox dropped dung into dough, or any case of tzoros, that it still remains half payment damages. So now the Gemara asks a good question. It says, firstly, is it abnormal for an animal to drop dung onto the dough? Now, why is that a good question, guys?
Because it's one of the things of carrion.
Okay, but why is it a good question?
Because is it intentional or unintentional?
You're getting there, but you're not there yet. Yeah.
You're talking about an animal. You're comparing a natural habit of animal and one that's not natural. You know, one that's like a fluke.
No, that I get. I'm asking you. What I'm asking you is, why would it mention it here? In other words, I agree with you completely that if we find that it's a normal event, it would be classified under tzoros. Totally agree with you. If it's abnormal, it would be carrying tam tzoros. But the reason why we bring this up is that determines whether you're paying for half payment or possibly full payment. Because even sumchus, when carrying tam is mixed with tzoros, would say it's half payment, because it's the carrying tam part.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So the animals want to say that when it's not muad, maybe it's a case of the fact that the animal's doing an abnormal behavior, and that's why they're bringing up the case of the animal with the dung. Because if it's normal, it's a normal case of tzoros. This is carrying.
Sorry, that's what I meant to say. Normal behavior or abnormal. Sorry, not intentional, unintentional. Sorry, I made a mistake. But that's what I meant to say. Sorry, normal behavior or abnormal.
But what you said is perfect. But the reason we need it is we need to know about half payment versus full payment. Because the Gemara says, if these Amoraim merely dispute how much one pays for tzoros, then Rav Yehuda should state straightforwardly, the halacha follows sumchus. And Rav Elazar should say, the halacha follows the rabbis. So it's saying, listen, they should just be straightforward. They're obviously coming to teach you something else. So the Gemara answers, Rav Elazar needed to teach us that the animal's droppings of dung is a case of tzoros. Otherwise, you might have thought that since the droppings are subordinate to the animal's body, in other words, they're contained inside, it's like a case in which the animal inflicted damage directly with its body, which would either be a case of direct regel, like an animal putting its foot down, at which case it would be full payment damages, or you might have thought it's some case of shame where the animal relieves itself, and then we learn the rule from Russia and saying indirect physical relieving of the animal compared to an animal scratching an ish or rolling the hay is not considered an act of shame, physical gratification, at which there wasn't full-time damage. But if it's a case of regal, where the dung is part of the animal, because it was part of the animal, then it's full payment damages. So the Amoraim are coming to teach a principle that dung that leaves an animal is actually a case of tsuros, not regal. That's what we needed to learn. That we didn't know. So then once we know this, the Amoraim inform us that it's nonetheless a case of tsuros. Okay, so there's one quick source. We got 8 minutes left, 9 minutes. The Gemara seeks to resolve the inquiry on the basis of a different source. Come learn a proof from the following. For Rami Bar Yecheskel taught in a brisa that states, if a rooster extended its head into the hollow of a glass vessel and shrieked into it, breaking it, the rooster's owner pays full damages. But Rav Yosef said, they say in the Academy of Rav, if a horse neighed or a donkey brayed and broke vessels with its piercing cry, the animal's owner pays only half damage. Is it not that both rulings were said in a case where the animal did so 3 times? Okay? They argue about the following. So one master, the Tana of Rami Bar Yecheskel's Brisa, holds that there is muad for tsuros, whereas the other master, Rav's Academy, holds that there's no muad for tsuros. So it's using the last example to say there's 2 different arguments here. Are they not arguing when an animal did this 3 times? Brayed, either it was a donkey or a mule that brayed and then broke glasses with the sound of its voice, or a rooster that was pecking for seeds in a vessel and decided to shriek at the same time. So they want to say that maybe this is a case where it happened more than 3 times, and Rami Bar Yecheskel taught that the owner pays full damages for more than 3 times, and maybe Rav Yosef said in the Academy of Rav that if it did it for more than 3 times, that the animal is in fact not muad, and it never becomes muad on its half payment damages. So again, what it's basically saying is it rejects this proof. It says there's nowhere in this particular brisa that it talks about the amount of times that the animal did damage. It says these authorities are speaking about where the animal has shattered vessels with its piercing cry or scream only a single time, and they're arguing the point of dispute between Sumchus and the rabbis. Does that make sense? So they're saying this isn't a proof. There was no mention in this brisa about happening 3 times. Same as before, arguing Sumchus full damages, rabbis half payment damages for normal tsuros. So the Gemara asks one point. It says, is it abnormal for a rooster to shriek in a vessel? Because they're saying that maybe it's full payment damages, that because it was abnormal of a rooster shrieking in a vessel, then it's keren tam and therefore it's half payment. And they're saying, no, this brisa refers to where there's seeds in the vessel. In other words, a chicken started pecking and eating the seeds, and then it decided to make a noise in the vessel. Does that make sense? And therefore it broke it. It didn't just stick its head in the vessel and made a scream. So the Gemara seeks to resolve this inquiry. So this is where we're holding now. We've got 6 minutes left. I'm just going to fly through.
Okay.
All right. So basically, Rav Ashi inquired, is there a provision of abnormality for tsuros in regard to quarter damages? Or if there's no provision of abnormality for tsuros in regard to quarter damages? So what are we saying here? He's asking the side point. He says, all right, say you have a case of keren tam mixed with tsuros. Is it half payment damages or is it quarter? So already we've seemed to have established, by the way, from this, that there's no proof that for normal tsuros, if an animal does it more than 3 times, that it ever becomes muad, for the reason Kevin said, for the reason Gavin said, for the reason Arthur said, is that it doesn't resemble keren tam. yes, it might be half payment damages like Keren Tam, but the one is the law from Moshe of Har Sinai, and the other one is because the animal is tame and then it becomes liable for full payment. It should have paid full payment anyway. It's just that it was a first-time offense. So the two, even though they're both half payment damages, doesn't seem to resemble each other. So for normal tzoros, it doesn't seem at all that there's evidence that for more than 3 offenses you pay full payment damages. Now, this case with do you pay quarter damages? What are we talking about here? The question is as follows. Fine. For normal tzoros, you pay half payment damages. For Keren Tam, you pay half payment damages. If you combine Keren Tam and tzoros, do you pay quarter payment damages or do you pay half? So I'm just going to outlay the question quickly. You could think that maybe you pay quarter. Why? Because in normal Keren Tam, you pay half, and when it's Keren Muad, you pay full. So if it's Keren Tam for half, the tzoros might further take away half the payment, because of a normal payment for Regal, you're paying 50%. If you're paying 50% on Keren Tam, it's 25%, it's a quarter. So do you pay a quarter? And you can say the question the other way around. For tzoros, you're paying half payment. If you mix Keren Tam, where it's like where it's unusual damage, are you paying a quarter because it's unusual for the first 3 offenses if it's mixed with Keren Tam? So he's saying because there's half for Keren Tam and half for tzoros, is it 50% of 50%, which is 25%, which is a quarter? Or do they negate each other, meaning it's capped at a half, which means even if they're mixed, you're either going to have the half for the Keren Tam or you're going to have the half for tzoros, but you're not getting away with paying less than half. You're already paying half, a leniency with Keren Tam and tzoros from the body of the animal. It would seem from that previous example of the dog and the biscuit. So that's already a leniency. Does that make sense?
So, yeah, it seems like the 25% would be too much, but let's see. It seems like half and another half would be a little bit unfair. That's more of a gut feel. I'm just going according to the 2 rules. You've got 2 leniencies, and to apply 2 leniencies, I think wouldn't make sense.
Well, it's great for the one guy, not the other.
Left, and then what do you mean, Arth?
It's great for the guy who's only paying 25%, not great for the guy who lost 75%.
Exactly. All right. I think that's a good point. It's got to be fair for both people. I think Arthur's right. All right. So let me just conclude. The Gemara seeks to resolve on this inquiry. Resolve it on the basis that which Rava inquired. For Rava inquired, is there muad for tzoros or is there no muad for tzoros? This implies that there is no provision of abnormality for tzoros in regard to quarter damages according to Rava. Because if Rava is actually asking the question, is there muad or not, then it obviously implies that if it's full payment, he's not asking, is it quarter and it goes to half payment? He's asking, does it go to full payment, which means his default position means it must be standing at half payment damages. Because if he thought it would go to quarter, Kevin, he would end up saying, well, does it go to half? And if he says, does it go to half, we're implying he's holding that if Keren Tam and tzoros were together, he would assume it's at quarter and says, well, if it does it more than 3 times and it becomes muad, do you owe half then? But because he just says, does it become muad straight, it would seem from that opinion that Rava holds that it is a half payment and it doesn't go less than that. And the Gemara rejects this proof. It says perhaps Rava means if you were to conclude and say that there's no provision of abnormality from tzoros, we could still inquire there whether there's muad for tzoros or not. So the Gemara concedes let it Rav Ashi's inquiry stand unresolved. So all it's saying is, he's saying if you were concluding that there's no quarter and there's only half, do you then pay full if it's more than 3 offenses? So we can't conclude that Rava says that it's only half payment.